Well, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming today. I'm so excited to have Joseph Orozco here from Hoopa. Before we get started, I thought I would just tell you guys a little bit about who he is, and he's done so much impressive work. He is the former editor and journalist of the only independent newspaper out of the Hoopa Valley. It's called Common Sense. He has served as a board member for the Hoopa Valley Telecommunication Corps, the NFCB, the Pacifica Radio Affiliates, and the Indigenous Communication Association. He has been station manager and lead producer / mentor for KIDE in Hoopa, and radio producer of the Northern California Cultural Communications, NC3. He's a national award winner of the Silver Reel Award for Balancing Life, Dancing in Time. He is also the co-producer of the NC3 production, Dying for Water, Indians, Politics, and Dead Fish on the Klamath River Basin. And he is not done yet. Currently, he considers himself an independent producer of Native media in the Hoopa Valley. So give it up for Joseph.
Thank you. Thank you for the honor of being here. This is really nice. I've been thinking, well, what am I going to talk about? Well, I'll talk about that. I'll talk about a lot of things. I just been in radio for, seems like a couple of decades, maybe 40. And I kind of backed into it. Back in 1978, maybe it was 77, Leonard Crodog was getting out of prison after the Wounded Knee incidents, and he wanted to come to California to do a Sundance in honor of all of the California tribes and people who helped support him during his incarceration. So there was a notice that was sent out through all of the Indian agencies in eastern Contra Costa County. That's where I was back then. And so I saw that, and I said, wow, I can stay here and get paid CETA wages, or I can pack up my car and go over and help them set up the Sundance grounds. So I decided to do that. And I was there, and there was another fellow there. His nickname was Sunrise. Michael Herman was his real name, but everybody called him Sunrise. And he was there to help DQ University create and build a 10-watt radio station. So I never thought about radio other than KPFA and all the other commercial stations that were on the air and just listening to music and things of that nature, and never really gave it a thought. But this guy, Sunrise, that's all he talked about for 2 weeks. Radio, 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 this is that, and all that. And okay, fine, Sunrise, keep working. You know. And so the dance was over. It was a really nice experience. Hot. It was really hot there in Davis, California. And I came back and I thought, well, what am I going to do now? I was no longer employed with anybody. And I thought, well, maybe it's time to change the page and do something else. So I thought about it. I happened to know a friend who was going to Jamaica and wanted to know if I'd want to go with her. Okay, option. A former college, what do you call him? He's a department head, makes an annual trip to China. And I was involved in student government and stuff, and he knew I was do social politics and things. So he said, why don't you come along? And I said, we'll pay your way there and back, but you have to come up with your own spending money. And I thought, okay, that's another option. And then I'm a member of the Hoopa Valley tribe, and I'm also a descendant of the Hopis from Oribe. My grandfather's from there. So I thought, well, I can go to Hopi, or I can go to Hoopa. And I was kind of just weaving around. And one night, my grandfather, my Hopi grandfather, came to me and he said, go up north and do what you have to do and come down and visit sometime. I said, thank you. So that's what I did. So I get up there in Hoopa, and still didn't have a job to do. I thought, what I'm going to do is I'm going to write the next classical American novel. That's what I'm going to do. And well, I never did do that. And I went to the post office, and who did I run into but Michael Herman, Sunrise. I go, whoa, what are you doing here? He says, well, Hoopa Tribe hired me to help them build a 10-watt radio station. Actually, we got one going, and I'm going to a meeting. It's through the education department, and going to a committee meeting. You want to come along? I said, okay, I'll come along. So there I was, the new kid on the block, new tribal member, and I'm with this guy who knows about radio. So they said, why don't you be on our radio committee? And I said, well, okay, I could do that. I'm not doing anything else. So Sunrise says, what we're going to do, there is a National Federation for Community Broadcasters regional conference in Fresno this weekend. Let's go. So the education department gave us the funds to travel down to Fresno. And there I was there in a small group of people. It wasn't their national conference where there were like 300-400 people there. We're just maybe about 20, 30 people, all regional area. And they were talking NFCB, they were talking about all NTIA, they were talking all these acronyms. And one of them came up to me and says, don't worry about these acronyms, and we know you don't understand what we're talking about, but just ask any one of us, and we'll tell you something about what we're doing. I said, oh, that's nice. And as I sat there and I was listening to these people, and I was watching them, I had been involved in Department of Labor Department organizations and Department of Education organizations, gone to their conferences, and everybody was really tight with what they had. They wouldn't share anything, wouldn't talk with you. But these people, radio people, they're like wide open. And they would show me anything that they had. So here, I'm going to submit this proposal. You want to read it? And I thought, whoa, this has shocked me. I like these people. These are nice people. So I was listening to him, I got to thinking, this non-commercial educational FM station is really, really important. Because what we had already was a 10-watt radio station. So the tribe thought, well, we got this thing up and running. They built it before I got there. And they wanted to be able to tell good stories about themselves because they get such bad press. The Times Standard in that neighboring town had a local paper whose guy was quite Republican, and he was at that time we were going through a case, and he was on the other side of opposite of us, and so he just didn't like the Hoopa tribe. Anything negative happened to the Hoopa tribe, he wrote about it. So we wanted to be able to tell some good stories about ourselves to ourselves. Just really enjoy who we are. So the tribe went to the FCC to get the license. The FCC says we're not issuing any more 10-watt radio license. You have to go full power or nothing. And I thought, wow, okay. So they're making those moves, and that's when I joined the fray. And that's when I got introduced to the National Federation of Community Broadcasters, and that's where I realized this license that they have to go after is really important. Hoopa tribe needs us. And so we worked on it, and we had to come up with our own corporate, Hoopa Valley Telecommunications Corporation, which is what you read. And so me and a couple other tribal members, and actually there were 6 of us, but the 3 of us were the executive directors. And we did whatever we had to do to get the station up and running. So on December 10th, 1980, 10 o'clock a.m., our spiritual leader at that time, Rudolph Schottisch, he had a switch. We put a switch on a wall, and he said a prayer, and threw that switch, and boom, we're on the air. Merv George's song was the first one, Indian Love was the first song we played. And then after that, John Lennon's Imagine. And it never turned off since then. So that was how I backed into being part of Native radio, Native media. Never thought that would happen. Never, to this day, I think, wow, I was in the right place at the right time. Thanks, Grandpa. So that's that story. There was, I'm open to questions too, so if everybody has a question, I try to deal with that. I was thinking on my way over, well, what other stories can I tell? And you read off all of this list of things that I've been involved in. There was in Native radio at the time when we started, we were maybe about the 9th or 10th station. There's 66 now, maybe a couple more. But at that time, there was just the 6 of us or 9 of us. And we were just very small operations. We didn't have an economy to build upon. And the Corporation for Public Broadcasting had this whole system where the more money you brought in from the community, the more money they gave you. They awarded you that. Well, that's why Minnesota Public Radio has a budget of $4 million from CPB. And Hoopa Tribe, KIDE, we got 11,000. So we just couldn't. We couldn't grow. It was never enough money to really do something. Just enough money to survive, pay the electricity bill, pay the telephone bill, subscribe to some LPs at that time, and get those services, and just hang on. And that's what we talked about, and that's why I start joining the NFCB and working with this group of people, because I realized that in order for us to venture any further than just playing the same songs and doing the same thing over and over and over, we need to network and find out what's going on. So I was thinking, well, what do I need to do and what can I learn from the NFCB? And later on in my years, I realized I took the right choice, made the right choice, and what I wanted to do was to rub shoulders with these people who had a lot more experience in this business than I did. And they've been doing this for such a long time, and they are mastering it. And I got on the NFCB board, well, because in 1989, I think it was, and we got on the agenda. They were trying to, every time they meet, they come up with new members for the board to be nominated. They take nominations off the floor. And we made it a point, there's about 9 stations. There's a station from Canada was there. And he was really involved in government. And he says, we need to have a representative on the board of directors. So we kicked it around, and they identified one person to be there. It wasn't me. And I said, well, why don't we go for 2 members on the board? And that way, if one loses, the other one would win, maybe. Get double our chances. So we did that, and they put me on there. So we had to make presentations about why do we want to be on the National Federation of Community Broadcasters Board of Directors. And it's the same reason I talked about the same reason why it's important to have Native radio in Humboldt County and around the world. Because we are land-based people. We are a missing voice in this whole loud system of radio, be it commercial or non-commercial. There are just not that many of us. So people like to tell our stories, but we need to tell our stories. So that's why it's important to have Native radio and Native media now. Now I'm looking at, wow, any kind of media, that's fine. So surprise, surprise, when it came down to voting, we both were placed on the board of directors for the NFCB. From there, we were able to leverage. We got into what the other board that I was on at the same time that we developed was the Indigenous Communications Association. This was brought on through the work of Corporation for Public Broadcasting because they had consortiums. They had a Black consortium, an Asian consortium, but they didn't have anything for Native stations. There was a Native consortium, but it was a warehouse, actually. They didn't do any broadcasting. They just accumulated programs, audio and video, and they dispersed them through Indian higher education. So what they wanted for us to do was to create a indigenous Indian organization. That's what they wanted. So they took us up to Wingspan. It's in Wisconsin, Frank Lloyd Wright building. Beautiful building. Oh my God. It's amazing. We flew in air on one of those seaplanes. First time I ever landed on that lake. And you get a good view from that plane because the wings are up high, so you can see the ground. You're in every way. So we got into there, and they had a group of CPB consultants. And what they wanted us to do was to take this playbook and create an organization. So they gave us the heads up what it is. They had this big room in Wingspan. There's one room that had a big long table, and at every seat there was a Surface microphone. And next door to that room were a whole rows, kind of back to back, of reel-to-reel tapes. And people were sitting there. So every microphone was plugged into one machine. And so they recorded everything. They had pictures on the wall from dignitaries from around the world who had used that room. Very, very special place. So we listened to them. We got their playbook, and we said, time out. We need to talk amongst ourselves. At that time, I think there was 15 stations. And some of us were the first time we actually met one another. So we asked for an hour. We're going to go in that room and we're going to talk over what it is that we need to talk about. And we don't want any person who is not a station manager in that room. And that included the one Native American consortium person who didn't have a station. He was Native, but he didn't have a station. So we met, and we decided if we're going to create an organization, it's going to be our corporation, our organization built on the tenets that we want. We don't want to be a cookie cutter organization. So we thought, wow, what should we call ourselves? We didn't want to be called the Native American organization, so we tossed that around. We came up with the Indigenous Communications Association. And it wasn't just an association of Native stations. We were thinking, what if we created an organization that brought in all of the indigenous forms of communications, whether you're radio, television, newspaper, because there's silos of all these types of genres already. Can we create something that was inclusive? And not just to the United States, America, South America, Africa. That's why we called it indigenous. We didn't call it Indian. So it was an Indigenous Communications Association. That was what our thought. Signals in the Air. This is Native Broadcasting in America. ICA hired this fellow to write this book for us. And he did a lot of really great research. His name is Michael C. Keith, forward by Susan Joan Harjo and Frank Blythe, who was He ran the Native American Public Broadcasting Consortium. He was with the CPB. He was the only person acknowledged by CPB to be a Native consortium. And afterward by Peggy Berryhill, who is one of my mentors. Peggy Berryhill made me the producer I am today. So this book is very informative, and it talks about a lot of things I just talked about in a much deeper sense. Oh, my goodness. It was a really good time. In some respects, I could see that we needed to have that organization element that CPB wanted us, nudging us towards, because we just didn't have the wherewithal within our group to make sure that we had the financial accountability. We didn't do the due diligence in that. And we didn't misuse the funds. We just didn't leverage them correctly. That's when I look at this in hindsight. There's a lot of things that we could have done. But we also, because one of the other elements of why Native radio is important is because you need to have a renegade within the group. And you have to be inclusive. Things do not change unless somebody brings up why, and a question of why are you doing that? Would this also be leading in the same direction but from a different angle? You need to have, even in Native communities, why do we have media? Tribal Council likes to control Native media. A lot of tribal councils do. And to some extent, I can't say that we're no different. But that's the other thinking in my mind is that, how else can we, or how else can I influence the direction of Native media? And what can I contribute to that changing element in the awareness? The newspaper that was started called Common Sense, which I came up with the name because I was the editor. And I was looking at, well, this is the first newspaper that ever operated, independent newspaper that operated on the Hoopa Valley Reservation. There's other things where people just, we called them slippery eel. There's a thing called slippery eel, and what he did is just jabs, or she, we don't know whoever was slippery eel, but just take jabs at people. Some of them could be rumor, but people, but I came with it because I was born in the San Francisco Bay Area. I read newspapers, so I thought, I could do this. I could do a newspaper. I didn't know how much work it was to do a newspaper where you only have a person who writes whatever it is that who types whatever it is that you write. And so it was up to me to be the editor, the commentator, and a journalist. And after I did that for a while, some other community people came on and said, I'll do your public affairs person. Another person came on and said, I'll do your sports person. So, okay, cool. So it grew a little bit. But basically, it was a two-person operation. Back in the day, it wasn't digital. It was cut and paste. That's when newspapers were a really dirty business. You come out there, your hands are just like black with that ink. And but it was fun. It was taxing. Thank goodness we only did an edition every other week. And to this day, I think I have been the only editor, even of the tribal newspapers and all the editors they have, to come up with an editorial for every edition that we printed. You have to have a renegade in every group. You have to bring attention to what is missing, who's not at the table, what is their opinion, and how will our opinion affect what it is that they're trying to do or not doing. Or That's a value. And being a land-based people, you can't deport us. They tried. They tried really hard. And they moved people from their Aboriginal territories to take on some place out in the desert somewhere or out in the hills and the plains, and by golly, they struck oil. And, well, that was a mistake on their part. And then they just, by the time they got out to California, they got to see the error of their ways, I think. Don't try to negotiate terms with these people, because they'll play along with you, and then they'll figure out a way to maneuver things around. So just wipe them out by the time we got to California. So those of us who are here today are the descendant of the remaining 2%. And we've been building, we've been growing and growing. And we have never changed our philosophy. We are part of the environment. The environment is part of us. We do not put it in a silo. And that's one of the main reasons why a lot of people come to us and want to know the ancient wisdoms. And I scratch my head sometimes. I think, well, wait a minute. Wait, where are you from? Aren't you from Earth? There's ancient wisdoms around the globe. People did things differently. It's only been in the last 500 years or so that people have really been obnoxious and cruel. Joy Harjo said, we say that the pilgrims and celebrate Thanksgiving and that this is a mispronunciation. It's pillagers in Indians. That's how she poems it. And I got that from, there's a story in here. I've been reading this book, Sovereign Bones, Native American Writing. Actually, this was printed in 2006. But some great stories. And that's the other thing I like to do, just what are our stories? That's why I'm in this media business, because that is the purpose of radio. We had it right in the first place when we wanted a 10-watt radio station. We need to tell good stories about ourselves. We need to make ourselves feel good, because there's a lot of people trying to make us feel bad. Not a lot, or enough of them. Just like I just saw on the NFCB listserv, there was the thing that happened in, what was it, back east, there's a shooting. And it happened just blocks away from the radio station. And so that went out on a listserv, and everybody was safe. The manager wanted to let everybody know that everybody was safe, and they followed the protocol. If something like that happened, they just closed everything down, locked all the doors, and the personnel that was at the station spent the night there in the studio. So, okay, they were safe. So we're glad to get that news that everybody was safe. But it's just a sign of the times. You know, there's so many frightening things happening, so many anger and confusion, and that it becomes almost normal to be on the guard just to make yourself feel safe. But then you look at that action, it really is unnatural and it's wrong. Shouldn't have to do that. There should be a bit more compassion. And I'm glad that the people are safe, and I'm glad that most of the population is sane. Otherwise, we'd really be in a mess. So those are the kinds of things I've been looking at and listening to and watching for and responding to, because I'm thinking that together we still need to come together. And figure out a way how we can best make the best possible outcome out of the worst possible conditions that we may have be living in today. So I'm looking forward to continuing on with my work in Native media and continuing my work in networking with NFCB and the Pacifica Radio Foundation, which has always been in turmoil. As a Pacifica's such a great operation, and the reasons, the ideals that they came together to create Pacifica was something that a lot of us stations were attracted to. A lot of stations aren't attracted to it, but a lot of us are. And when we see that the core stations, the 5 core stations, are bickering with one another for whatever reason, and the affiliates, which is probably about 225 affiliates, which are not board members, we have 2 representatives, but we don't have the license to make major decisions. So I'm thinking, what we did end up doing was creating an association of affiliates, which is a separate nonprofit from the Pacifica Foundation, but sanctioned by the Pacific Foundation to be a separate nonprofit. And so Ursula Utenberg, she's one who created this. And we're looking at that as maybe what we could do with a brand new organization, AOA. What is it that if we're going to be representing the stations, we ought to be talking with these stations. We ought to be asking, what is it you want us to do? What's the worst possible thing that happen if we don't come together and be an association? And flip that. What would be the best possible outcome if we do communicate as an association? And see how that works out. It's a step in consensus building. And when you have a conflict within any organization, any family, any government, you've got to address that conflict. Conflict is your friend. And as soon as you start addressing that conflict and start listening to, well, what's their point of view? Why do they have that opinion? And then they listen to this other person. What's their point of view? And what's their understanding of that situation? And we start hearing one another. Then we can take all this information and think, well, now what? If we're all feeling this, what is the best possible outcome that could come from this kind of understanding? And what do we need to do next in order to achieve that? And would we be willing to do these things so that we don't have to put it to a vote, a majority rule vote? We just keep discussing it until we come to a 100% agreement to do the right thing. So I'm looking at the Pacifica AOA board and thinking, if this is what we want to present to the Pacifica Foundation board, we better be able to show them that we had taken this course to figure out what it is that the affiliates want and what do they need and what do they believe and what do they fear and what are their best possible outcomes. And then lay that out to them and saying we could do that for you too. Because it's an important organization, just like, you got what, ABC, NBC, CBS, Well, you need Pacifica because they're the renegade. They're the ones who are going to be bringing up the situations, and they always have. Democracy Now. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking about doing is trying to apply that energy, that things that I've learned, things that I'm starting to understand, and seeing how that could be presented to other people. So there's another book here. This is my prop table. We Are the Middle of Forever. This is a a line from John Trudell, and had a lot of respect for that man. He was actually one of the first Native American announcers in America from Alcatraz. The first licensed Native station came about in 1972. But Radio Free Alcatraz started broadcasting in 1968. And that was through Pacifica. KPFA loaned them their Marty, a remote broadcast unit, sent it over them. They broadcast back to KPFA, and KPFA sent it around the world. So that was the very first Native American broadcast. And then the licensing happened in 72. So we're the new kids on the block. And talking with the FCC about this, there were some FCC representatives who's Native person, Jeff Blackwell, and I was at a presentation with him, and I pointed it out. You know, when the FCC started doing this licensing, they didn't come to the tribes and negotiate airspace. So here we are, 1972. We come on the air in 1980, and all of the airspace around us is already taken up. You have a broadcast range around your antenna, and that broadcast range is on paper. What is actually heard is probably smaller, but on paper, the FCC looks at that. And if you have other stations over here, and their broadcast range is already coming around there, and we overlap that, they say, no, you can't do that. You can't put your antenna there. That's how that system works. And that's how it works against us. So we are actually blocked in. We can broadcast all we want in the valley, Hoopa Valley. Sometimes we seep out to Willow Creek, depending on the mountain ranges. So I'm thinking, well, wait a minute, how do we correct that? Because I'm thinking, a part of it in this book, I have a manifesto in this book that I wrote, but I didn't think of it in today's terms. And I'm thinking part of that has to do with broadcasting, radio, and now I'm thinking media, native media, should be a sovereign right. If not a sovereign right, it should be a trust responsibility of the federal government through the Bureau of Indian Affairs. I went to the BIA one time. I was looking for funding. We wanted to do some things, and can we have some more funds? Where do we get funds? Well, everybody goes to the BIA. Yeah, I got some education funds from the BIA. Got to go to college for a couple of years. So I thought, well, go to BIA. So I called them up, and I asked them if they have any grants available for radio stations. She said, no. How about newspapers? No. What do you have in communications? IT. Oh, okay. So I got to thinking, what if I got all the staff with a IT certificate from some internet classroom thing so that we could put on our resume that, yes, we are IT. We're an IT station. Could we get funded then? No. Okay, it's just a renegade thought, yeah, it might work. So, what's the answer? Congress. Congress is the one that created BIA. Congress is the one that created CBB. Congress is the one that created everything that is legal. And some of it illegal, I guess. All depends on how you look at it. But so what we need to do, or somebody needs to do, is to figure out a way for Congress to say that and to put within the Green Book, is what the BIA calls it, of all of the available ways that the federal government will support Native people. See, the Green Book is made up of all of the trust responsibilities that were first written on the East Coast of the treaties. Okay, you have the right to hunt, your right to fish, the right for medical services. You have all of these things that are written down. But in that writing, that composition of those policies and understandings and rights, we just didn't think about media. We didn't say, well, wait a minute, there's going to be radio stations sometime. You got telegraph. We want to be part of that telegraph. We didn't think of that. Our bad. So we don't have it. So how do we get it? Congress. Congress has to say yes. And for Congress to say yes, first, because it has to do with Native people, the National Congress of American Indians has to say, yes, we approve this. We endorse this. Because Congress will not endorse anything or set a policy without the endorsement of the NCIA. NCIA was originally a part of the War Department, which was also where the Bureau of Indian Affairs came and Department of Interior came. So that's dying for water. That thing just popped in my head. Dying for water. Merv George says, you ever hold one of those salmon in your hands? It's like holding that infant. You have to be tough like a salmon. You have to swim upstream. You know how hard it is to be a salmon? That's our story. That's a renegade part of it. We got to swim upstream. So then you see who's behind you. So that's how we can do it. I'd love to be able to talk with Deb Haaland. I'm glad that she's in the Secretary of the Interior. There is the president of the National Federation, the president for the National Congress of American Indians. She's up in Washington State. I've actually, she has a story in this book here. We are in the middle of forever. That's where I started with the story. We are the middle of forever. What does that mean? Well, you think about it. It means that very similar to this book, Medicine Trails, A Life in Many Worlds. This is about Mavis McCovey, who is a Karuk doctor and also a seer. People go missing. Too bad she's not around now. But people vanish in the river. They come to her and ask her, where might they be? And she would say, go to the mouth of the river, go north about 3 miles. By golly, that's where they found that person. And being in the middle of forever is living in two worlds. However, you can't live in both of them at the same time. So I'm speaking to you in English because I haven't mastered Natinaway. And over here, I'm much involved in our ceremonies. That's part of who I am. So we are in the middle of it forever, in that most non-native people have an image of us. And again, you go back even to the Thanksgivings. There's this image of people coming together and celebrating harvests when it wasn't that way. But that's the way the story goes, because we are in the middle. We can step to one side and say, no, we're not. We're over here now, and we can be very successful. And we can be very authoritative. Or we can go over this side and say, yeah, we could do that. Yeah, no problem. We can dance that dance. But we have to make a choice, and we can go back and forth, and we'll never escape that. That's what being in the middle of forever is all about. In this process, I finished this book. This is a brand new book. Came out this year. It is by Dahr Jamail, and Dr. Stan Rushworth. And what they did is they did interviews with various people throughout a lot of them from California, and some, well, the woman who was the president of the National Congress of American Indians. And I got finished reading this book. I thought, wow, these are some great stories, great insights. I want to interview these people. There must be some things that was not printed. What is the rest of their story? Because that's what I love to do. I like to hear people's stories. And if I can share those stories in their and let them, that's why I like recording. I'm not telling their story, they're telling us. I'm just opening up the door for them. Say, here's your microphone. You're on stage. Go for it. Tell your story. Okay. I might do some editing to take out the uhs and that kind of stuff. But I let them tell their story. Why did you do this? What were you thinking? And then what did you do? Wow, that must have really been awful. Hey, I like that. That's cool. Yeah. So if I could do that, that's what I want to do. That's why I'm not finished doing this work. There's a lot of people. We did another thing that you mentioned in there for the Northern California Cultural Communications, NC3. We did the California Indian Radio Project. We thought that's a working name. We'll just call it that, and something will come up. We'll get a really juicy name title out of this. Well, we did. We interviewed about 247 California natives, and we had hours and hours of recordings, and nothing came up. So it stayed the California Indian Radio Project. And okay, it works. It was doing. So we took this. We actually, my wife, Ruby Cook, who was very integral about this whole process. She was the executive director of this project. And she's the one who went out and got all these grants. She's put together all these small grants. And we started out with $25,000 there, $10,000 there. And as long as we had the money, we did the traveling. And when the money dried up, well, we had to do other work. We just didn't do any production. So we kept on figuring, well, wow, CBB, they got all this money, they got this production money. Well, let's apply to CBB. Well, we need to have some really good program content. Peggy Berryhill came in. She was the lead director. And that's how I learned to do production, through her. Oh, she's tough. She's tough, but I love her. And so she said, take some of my production and submit it with their proposal. So we did that. No, didn't fly. Then we tried another approach with the national CBB, and they said, this is about California. This is not national. Go to the state. So we go to the state. The state looked at it and read it and listened to some of our productions that we had parts of. And he said, this is not regional, this is national. Take it to the national. So finally, we got national funding. We're like half, we did 6, there's 13 episodes, and we did 6 of them already in the can through bits and pieces. This weekend, that weekend. And then CBB says, yeah, we'll give you $56,000 to finish this project. And we go, cool. All right. So yes, I had gone back to work. So now I only had the weekends, so I was never home. 5 days a week I was at the radio station, and 2 days I was on the road getting tapes, recordings, San Francisco, Folsom. We didn't go too far south. So I'm sure there's a couple of California natives we did interview. So that's one of my goals, one of my projects. I'm not done yet. I've got to interview born Native Californians. So I finished reading this book, and I'm like, golly, this is the California Indian Radio Project. Why can't I just go to these two people and ask them, can you introduce me to these other people that you wrote in this book about? And they said, sure, we'll do that. I got one of them in a can now. And that's the first question I ask them. How do you feel about being in the middle of forever? What does that mean? And then talk about all the great things that they do. And why do they do that? What's their passion about doing that? And how is that helping their people? Land back issues. Talked about land back issues. Ask them about that. Is your tribe involved in the land back issue? And if they're not, what land do you envision in your mind that your tribe should have back? And what does that mean to have it back? Is it a collaboration? Or is it, because to have land back, then you have to have this other concept of saying, well, now it's mine. But it was never ours in the first place. Like I said earlier, we're part of the environment. The environment's part of us. We are. That's why we didn't own land. Other people came here and said, hey, we just want to have a little bit of land. Well, okay, go ahead, take it. Yeah, go ahead. You can camp there, or put it in your pocket and take it back. You know, that's cool. It's not ours. So that's a whole different mindset, And I'm thinking that's why we have native radio. That's why it's important. And I would say, it's why we have indigenous radio. There's a lot of things that are happening in Central America and South America that need to be heard. And that's what I'm thinking with my new project that I want to do, of my new beginning. I have a website. It's in the making. I own it in the fact that, kwdr.org, because I want to be a satellite radio, because I don't want to have this constraints of full power FMs, and I want to have a little bit more independence. And I'm only one person, so I'm not going to be on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I'm not going to be on 15 hours a day, 7 days a week, or 18 hours. That's CPP standards. And even the FCC, a minimum hours to have an FCC full power license, I think it's 6 hours a day, 6 days a week. Something like that. So I don't even want to do that. I just want to be able to share my messages. I'll try to keep some kind of a schedule. But in the beginning, I always did the Common Sense newspaper every other week. Okay, I know how that feels, I know how that felt, and I'm thinking I could probably generate some more. And with this book here, Middle of Forever, I've got a whole catalog of people, and I've already got 6 in a can. They're all in raw form. Now I got to do some editing. So I have a lot of work to do, and just piling up is just as much as the plum tree branches are piling up that I gotta get rid of and chop those down for firewood and stuff, and bundle them up and take care of the sheep, take care of the dog, cattle, stuff like that. But hey, that's part of the benefits of being alive. You know, it's a nice, joyous thing. Hard work sometimes. Dislocate at my thumb. Every time I move it, it pops. Oh, well. This one has arthritis. Oh, well. I'll go to acupuncture, get those fixed. What else do I want to do? The thing, and why do I want to do it? That's the thing. Always, I like that whole concept. Simon Sinek. Start with the question why. Why do you want to do something? And why I want to do it is because there's stories out there. There are people. There are Native organizations. The Red Bud Resource Group. They're near Santa Rosa. They're doing some great work in education, young people's education. They're doing webinars and sessions about what do you call it? Land back issues, yes, but they're doing land acknowledgements, going beyond land acknowledgements, and they're doing partnerships with a lot of really nice environmental organizations in California. And they just posted on their website the whole new menu of things that they're doing. And I think, wow, there's a radio show in every one of those titles. Who are these people? The California College, California Tribal College, that's what it is. I just happened to get a Facebook notice from the person who I had known for quite a while, and she's a tribal member. She has been in a lot of businesses and locally and reached out nationally and all around the state as well. And we had some mutual mentors along the way. And I got a Facebook message from her. She was sitting at this table with these group of Native people. But she didn't tell me no title in it. Just here's the latest picture. And I could see it was in a cafeteria type of thing or a conference room. I had all these round tables and these people around this one round table. So I asked her, well, what is this? What's this organization? Who are you meeting with? And she said, the California Tribal College Organization. And she's the executive director. She's been doing this for a year now. I go, wow, what a great story. I want to know more. Now I'm going to be networked with all of the other California Tribal College programs. And she gave me a whole list of all the tribes that are associated with them. So now there's another trail, more stories to tell. And why I want to do this is so that more people will get to know about these organizations. Well, these organizations don't have to put out that much work to continue the good work that they're doing. You know, and everything that happens in every business, you got this is a four-legged stool, but typically the three legs. And this I learned from another Soroli Institute. People can be any one of the legs, and sometimes people can be two of the legs. But it's very rare that a person can be all three legs. So I'm a producer. I'm a promoter. I don't do the financial things very well. I need somebody to hold up that leg, otherwise my chair tips over. So that's my other challenge. Financially, what do you call that? Not financially challenged, although I do have limited supplies, but that's, those will grow. But making that making a system out of it, making a file out of it, and that's just not my strong leg. So, and I'm okay with that because as long as I just get some help, I'll be okay. Because I can take care of the production, and I could take care of the promotion. I love being here on the front of the mic. I like performing, and I don't know, I've just always been that way. And I like to listen. I remember growing up with my mom, my dad. And, I'm the youngest of three. My two older sisters, the youngest one is 8 years older than me. The other was 9 years older than me. They both passed on. And so it was just me and my folks. And it was just me and my folks, my aunties and uncles. And it was just me and my folks, my aunties and my uncles and our grandparents. So I grew up around a lot of older people. And the one thing about you grow up with a lot of older people, you learn to not talk a lot. And you learn to listen. They always said, 2 ears, 1 mouth, listen twice as much as you speak. So, yeah, I got that, Mom. So that's how I got to do what I do. And I thought, wow, that's cool. I'm all right with that. So the more stories I can listen to, the more stories I go and produce, and the more knowledge that other people will have about all these other people just around us. Yeah. A part of me wants to say, why don't we all get in a circle and introduce ourselves? In the consensus building process, that's what we do. We're all in a circle, so everybody's equal. And the first thing we do is the greetings. Hello, I'm Joseph Orozco. I'm in the middle of forever. And I'm okay with that. That's how I'm feeling. I'm feeling really happy. And the next person we introduce themselves. And to go around and around and around until we all introduce ourselves. You could also say, and what's your connection to this process that we're going through right now? Or what's your connection? Talk about it, introduce yourself and talk about or make a statement of how you are involved with the situation that is the topic. And how do you feel about that? That's when everybody gets to say their say and how they feel about that. And everybody gets to listen to that. So no one can say that I didn't know they felt that way. And then when we have journal meetings, we have meetings at the tribal council, it's always, they're over here, like this is the podium, and the audience is over there. And then the meeting's over, a couple people come up to the microphone and say some things, but the majority of people don't. So I'm sitting there being the radio guy, and I'm thinking, what did that person think about what was said? How about that person? What was their opinion? I have no idea. But if we all sit around in a big circle, it's going to take a long time, sure. But that's what it takes. We seem to find enough time to make the same mistakes over and over, but we never find the time to do it right. That's another thing out of the consensus building process. So I'm looking forward to trying to integrate that in the Hoopa Valley community, trying to integrate that in the Pacifica Radio Foundation into the Association of Affiliates. Yeah, I'm open to all kinds of things like that. I like to be the renegade. You had a question? Oh. Oh, okay, sorry.
No, I do have a question.
Okay.
I have a question about secession in KIDE. So like that you're learning these things. Are there youth coming up from Hoopa Valley that are working with you at the radio station that are engaging in all this amazing work that you're doing and all this knowledge that you have? Are there, is there that young cloud spinning around your mountain?
I would. That's the other thing I'm a quandary about. I want the situation to be acknowledged that we don't have enough communicators. We don't have enough journalists. We, in the 1960s or since early 70s, probably early Humboldt State University, when it was Humboldt State University, they created the community, and a lot of the Native parents got together and they created the Indian Teachers Education Personnel Program, ITEP. And that focused on, the reason why they did that is because they realized that there were not enough Native American teachers in the school district. We wanted our children to be taught by people like them. And that was the drive. And that succeeded. Hoopa Valley, the Klamath Trinity Joint Unified School District superintendent is now a Hoopa Valley tribal member, the very first Hoopa Valley tribal member to have that seat. There are several Hoopa Valley, Karuk, and Yurok tribal members who are teachers. Before, they were just, the highest rank they got was teacher's aides, classroom attendant type of things, Johnson O'Malley programs. So I'm thinking, well, why can't we do that for media? Why can't we do that for communications? What will it take to make the drive that Native people will demand that the school district and the college district create a, a learning track for people saying we need to have more communicators. We need to have more journalists. We need to have more storytellers. Wow, we got storytellers. We got all kinds of storytellers, but how do we move them forward, and how do we educate our children to follow that and to keep that up? That's another problem, or it's another issue. It's another opportunity, I guess I would say. There's always opportunities to grow, and it's just a matter of taking that step. So, hey, 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 you, hey, you. Well, I like to stay here and talk a long time, but any other questions or thoughts and ideas, directions? Yes, it's www.kidefm.org. It's online, and we've been doing that. That was something that we thought about for a while as all of the stations were going online. But when you do that, then you open yourself up to the record industry authorities, and you have to start logging in to Sound Exchange, I think, or Sound something, of every song that you play. And we lost our program director, our music director. He was saying, well, I don't like that. I don't like that. It's going to spoil my show, because you cannot play the same artist, any one artist, more than 3 times in an hour, and you can't play them back to back. So he said, that's going to ruin my show. I don't like that. So if we ever make that decision, go in that direction, I'm gone. And we made that decision to do that, and he retired. So he was a good guy, too. Oof. But, yeah. So we're on the internet, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We are the emergency alert system for Eastern Humboldt County. And that's a big responsibility. I wish we had more people to maintain that, because at the same time, while we have that responsibility and that obligation we feel, and you only have 3 people, it makes it tough when high water comes. the New Year's Eve storm of 2006. People were getting ready to go out and celebrate New Year's Eve. And it was a Friday, payday. I got the notice from the TIPA, Environmental Protection Agencies, that a storm is coming, expect high waters of 51 feet. I thought, oh my God, it's going to verge of flooding. So I said to our 2 other staff, if you had any plans for this New Year's Eve, they're off. We're going to be on the air 24/7, live. And so we split up the schedule in 12-hour shifts. And I get a call from the fiscal department. Says, you going to come over and pick up your checks? I said, no, we're kind of busy right now. And so she says, okay. And so the next thing you know, she pulls up in front of the door. And she says, here's your checks. So thank you. And then they took off. And it rained. It rained really, really hard. And that storm knocked out the electricity and all of Humboldt County. The only 2 stations that stayed on the air was KHUM and KIDE. And people were calling us, wanting to know if the dam broke. I heard a rumor the dam broke. No, it didn't break. We couldn't get out. We couldn't get out of the valley because the slides were blocked in on both ends. So the music director thought, I got to go home. I'm going to change my clothes and get something to eat and feed my cat. And so he took off, and 20 minutes later he comes back and says, I can't get out of the valley. So we had a cot, slept there until next morning, and he took over again. So, yeah, that's the other reason why we stay on the air. People tell us that when they hear the station, it makes them feel at home. They go through all the drudgeries and the conflicts and everything that they do at work, and they come home and it's eases their mind. So that's important. So.
I was just going to say also to go off of Jeff's question that because I've aired them on Humboldt Hot Air, that all episodes of the California Indian Radio Project are accessible online.
Correct.
And I've aired all of them, so you can go to the KIDE website and find those.
Yes, they're all there.
And is Dying for Water, is that anywhere online?
That's online too. I got several copies here. You know, anybody want one, you can have them. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. So everything that's online you can download. If you can't, then I guess I should give you my email. Yeah. Okay. Well, there, like I mentioned before, there is another position that's open to maintain the website. When I was thinking about retiring, I thought about, nobody is taking care of the website. It seems like I'm the only person that does that. So what if I enter a contract with you? And I would just do that at home. There, put in 10 hours a week, and I just update the website. So okay, we'll do that. Then I thought, looking at the tribal contract form. Oh my God, and there's a lot of hoops you got to go through that. So I said, well, what if we take this contract and just make it into a job description? Same thing, 10 hours a week. I do it at home. And just give me the information and I'll put it on the website. So that's what we're looking at now. So that's on the table. I have to let them, so they offered me the position, which is really nice because they doubled my pay, which is, even at 10 hours a week, I'm still a nice chunk of change. But I make that decision of actually taking that or completely step aside. You know, how much time do I have? Do I want to juggle that one? Don't know. I got a few days to decide. You know. part of me says, yeah, do it. Because I could always retire. I always have a fail-safe. That's what I really like about this life. Yeah. Yeah. Question in the back. There's a reason, because it wasn't in the original treaties. No, that's why I want to sit down with Deb Holland and the president of the National Federation, or the National Congress of American Indians. Also like to have in on that table Elizabeth Warren, because she's good friends with both these people. And I read her book. That was a really dynamic book. I like that. I like the way it, persistent. I think that's what it's, persist, something like that. And I said, I knew I liked that woman. Okay, so I get her at the table. So that's what I would really like to do, is just to broach the idea. What can possibly go wrong with that? Yeah. Have all of us Indians talking with one another. Yeah. I like the idea. So there we are. Well, I'd like to thank you for having 2 ears and let me do all the talking. Okay. Thank the person up in the booth.
Thank you for coming. It was great. And thanks everyone for coming out tonight.
All right. Thank you. Sure, go ahead.